Hi, I'm Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm here with Tern Vektron. It's a Bosch-powered folding electric bike. For the detailed specs on this bike, current pricing, to get our contact information so that you could come to Ladysmith and try it out, or to have us bring it to you anywhere on Vancouver Island or the Lower Mainland as part of our Try at Home program, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. Obviously, folding bikes have a number of advantages. One, of course, is that they don't take up as much space. They're more compact, so it makes it easy to transport it in your car, your boat, an RV, maybe you want to fly somewhere with it. That's all possible with the smaller size. Even if you need to store it in your apartment or in your home, the nice small size makes it easy to do that. Folding or compact bikes can also be easier to manage on public transport. So if you want to take the train and then ride the rest of the way on your bike, a folding bike like the Vektron here is a great option to consider. Now, if you only need a compact bike and not necessarily a bike that folds, you could consider the recent Mueller Tinker. You can check out our website for an in-depth video review of it. And keep in mind that a compact bike takes up as much space as a folding bike, just in a different configuration. So the Tinker here will take up a bit of a rectangular space, whereas a folding bike like the Vektron will fold right up into more of a cubic space. Now, if you don't want to invest in the Bosch drive system, which I highly recommend, it's a great system, I'm going to talk about that in this video, but if you're not wanting to spend that much on the Vektron, then Tern also has the E-Link, which uses a less expensive drive system and a few less expensive components to make it a really great value. And for a detailed in-depth video review of it, you can also find it on our website at citruscycles.ca. But in this video, I'm going to step you through all of the details of the Vektron here. I am going to show you how easy it is to fold and to unfold. We'll also do a ride test as well. If at the end of the video or at any point during the video you have questions, just head over to our website at citruscycles.ca and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So let me run you through some of the features on the bike, and then I'll get into the Bosch drive system and the battery, and then we'll take a look at the folding feature. It's a very attractive bike. We've got a little bit of blue on the frame here, but otherwise the black and gray really helps you to blend in if you are looking for a bike that is really going to stand out. It's a nice looking bike. So one of the questions about folding bikes is, will it ride like a regular bike? And generally speaking, in the case of the Tern bikes, you'll find that they do actually ride quite nicely, a lot like a regular bike, and Tern's done some really neat things to make that happen. I'll do a ride test later, and of course you're welcome to come try it for yourself and see what I mean. It's a fun bike, very agile, very maneuverable, and I'll take you through some of the features that Tern has included with this bike to make it very comfortable. And the neat thing about this bike is it will work for people that are under 5 feet, I think about 4'10", all the way up to 6.5 feet tall. So really it's suitable for anyone, and they've done that by making it really adjustable. And that's what helps with the comfort. So let me take you through some of the adjustability features. Then I'll take you through some of the bike features. We'll look at the Bosch mid-drive system, and then we'll fold it up. So heading over here to the handlebars, it's neat because we've got a tool-less but very sturdy adjustment system here. We basically can lift up on these two levers here on either side of the light, and as soon as we do that, then we're able to bring the handlebars down lower. So I'll change the angle of the camera here, so closer to you and lower, or higher, or even further away. And the neat thing is that it is tool-free, and you notice as I'm moving it here, I can also rotate it. So one of the challenges when you have an adjustable stem is then you have to adjust your brake levers and everything else. With this system here, it's really easy to simply twist it once you've got it in the position that you want, and then lock those in, and now it's really very sturdy. So you've got some good adjustability for your height and for your reach on the front here. And the seat post, this is really innovative. This is actually a two-part telescopic seat post. So we've got a quick release here where we can drop this really low, so even my daughter can ride this bike. I can also bring it up quite high and lock that in with one hand, holding the camera. And then there's a second part here where you see I can even bring it up even higher. And just nice little features. Tern knows that you're going to be folding this bike up, and so you're going to be raising and lowering the seat post all the time. So you can see they've actually put numbers both on the top and the bottom of seat posts so that you can easily remember which two numbers you need for the combination. So as you can see, you can get that really very high to accommodate a lot of different heights. And this is a great bike if you're looking not only to fold it, but maybe you're looking to share it, and you can make those adjustments very easily. Speaking of comfort, we've got a fairly comfortable saddle here. Of course, you could always change that to your own, but you would miss out on the integrated pedal holder, which is really cool. So over here, the right side pedal has a squeeze quick release. So on the Tern here, the E-Link, we've got folding pedals. On the Vektron, we actually have regular pedals with a quick release. So you just squeeze that, these yellow tabs here, the pedal's going to pull right out, and then for transporting it, you can put it into the in behind the saddle here, and that way you won't lose it. And the one on the left doesn't come off because it doesn't need to. It'll actually be tucked inside when you fold the bike up. So that's a neat little feature there. Also, the other touch points of the bike, we've got these locking ergon grips, which is really nice. It makes it very comfortable. And while we're up here, I'll point out that they are using the Bosch Purion display. So that's a nice compact display compared to the Intuvia, for example, over here on the Tinker. It's a much larger display. Now, the larger display does have a couple of benefits in that you can charge your phone from the USB port, and it shows you a little bit more information on the trip computer. On the Purion, it's smaller, you can't charge your phone, but it still does show you your estimated range, which is one of the most important trip computer features, along with your distance. And it's permanently mounted. So on a folding bike, that's actually kind of nice because you're not worried about, you know, should I remove the display? And now if I remove the display, I won't be able to operate the bike while it's folded up. And you may be thinking, well, why would I want to operate the bike when it's folded up? One of the really neat things is that because they're using the Purion display and it's permanently mounted to the bars here, you don't have to worry about losing it or where you're going to store it. But it also means that you can use the walk mode when the bike is folded up. So it's actually quite cool. If you check it out on the Tern website, you'll see you can fold up the bike, hold it at the right angle, and then you can actually, I'll just take the kickstand off here. And by the way, before I forget, the kickstand is thankfully mounted on the rear chainstay, so it's not going to collide with the pedals if you're moving the bike around, and that works well when it's folded up as well. So anyways, back to the top here, if you've got the bike folded up and maybe you're going on and off a train or the ferry or something like that, you can just simply press and hold the walk button. It says walk, press plus. So now I press and hold plus, and I'll try that again, and now the bike actually moves itself along at a walking speed. So that can be used even when the bike is folded up. So that's really cool if you're looking for an easy way to get the bike on and off the train, something like that. You can actually fold it and access the walk mode from the display right on the handlebars here. So we've also got a handy little bell. Again, nice compact size, so when you fold it up, it's not interfering. We have Shimano Dior hydraulic disc brakes, which is fantastic. It means you're going to be able to stop the bike very easily. We have the shifters up here. We have a visual indicator as to what gear you're in. People often ask me about that. Sometimes a lot of the e-bikes don't have that. So we've got that on here. And we've got a 10-speed cassette on the back here, which is pretty impressive for a folding bike. So we've got a lot of gears. While I'm talking about the gears, I should point out here the bike a little bit. With these small 20-inch tires, it doesn't leave a lot of room for your derailleur cage. And so you can see that when you're in your lowest gear here, it's a fairly big sprocket, and so you need a long cage on the derailleur, and you can see it's, you know, it's really close to the floor here. There's not a lot of clearance, and it's really close to the tire there as well. So you want to make sure that stays in alignment and in adjustment. And that would probably be one of my concerns about this bike. I mean, it's a fantastic bike. I'm really happy with the features they've selected and how they put it together. But if you look at the E-Link here, for example, you can see that on it they've gone with the Shimano Nexus internally geared hub. And on a folding bike, there's a lot of benefits to that. One of which is obviously when you look over here, you're not now worried about hitting the derailleur on curbs or things like that. So this really, as a folding bike, is a bike you're going to want to use on the road generally. You're not going to be wanting to go off-roading too much with this bike. And you are going to want to keep your eye on the derailleur here, especially when you're in your lower gears. You'll want to make sure that you're not knocking that on curbs or things like that. Now, I'm probably more concerned about that than I need to be, because really, realistically, your pedals are going to strike the curb likely before your derailleur is. So it's probably not a big concern, but it is something that I'd like to point out. While I'm back here and pointing things out, I will mention that we've got the Schwalbe Big Apple balloon tires with Performance Line race guard and the light skin. What that means is that they have a high degree of puncture resistance, which is great because if you're using this bike for commuting, the last thing you want is to have to be dealing with a flat tire. So having that puncture resistance is a really great feature. In addition to the puncture resistance, what I really like about these Schwalbe Big Apples is they are balloon tires. Balloon tire means that there's a high volume of air in here at a low pressure, and that helps the tire to absorb all the bumps and knocks of the road. You'll notice that this is a rigid fork, which is typical for a folding bike like this one, and so you don't have a suspension fork like you would here on the recent Tinker. But Schwalbe did some interesting research, and they found that in an urban environment, a balloon tire can actually have as much of an impact on absorbing shocks and bumps as a front suspension fork. So that's a nice feature to have, these nice big balloon tires to really smooth out the ride for you. And we also, of course, have fenders, front and rear, fairly sturdy, and that's going to keep you dry when you're riding through puddles. And you'll notice there's a little magnet here. I'll get to that when I talk about folding it up. You'll see there's a corresponding magnet on the back here, and that allows the bike to stay together when you fold it up rather than coming apart. We also have a rear rack, and we have integrated bungee cords here, so you don't have to worry about forgetting to bring them along if you suddenly decide to stop and buy something and you need to put it on the rack here. And you, of course, can put pannier bags on the rack. We've got nice wide pannier blockers here, so they're not going to hit your spokes. Tern does make a wide variety of their own panniers as well that you can use on this bike, and if we don't have them all on our website, just contact us and we'll be happy to get you details on those. So I'm going to talk about the folding features in just a moment. I think I've covered most of the bike features. We do have a nice bright integrated light here, and you can see I've left the little protective film on my Purion display, which is handy because it reminds me that a long press on the plus will activate the lights. And so if I do that, then come over here, you can see the light is there. The light being mounted here is actually kind of handy because as you're riding, you can actually adjust the angle fairly easily. Whereas if you're riding a bike where the light's down here, you kind of are going to leave it there because while you're riding, if you're trying to reach over and adjust that, that'll be a little bit difficult. Here you can actually angle it fairly well. And of course, the light is running off of the battery from the Bosch system here, which is great. We've got a nice bright rear 2 LED light as well with a built-in reflector, and a reflector down here as well to make sure that you are seen and visible. Speaking of being seen and visible, the Schwalbe tires, I forgot to mention they do have a reflective sidewall as well to help with visibility from the sides. So lots of safety features, which is great to see. So before I talk about the Bosch Active line that is driving this bike, I should also point out we do have water bottle bosses here, so you could actually put a water bottle cage on the top here. Of course, if you do that, that's going to have an impact on getting on and off the bike, so keep that in mind. And that is one of the neat things about Tern is they do have quite a number of accessories and attachments. So if we look up at the front here on the head tube here, there's actually this plate here that can be removed, and when you remove that, you'll notice underneath there's a couple of mounting points under there for front rack, luggage rack, and they also make luggage for the bike itself. So if you want to travel with your bike, you can fold it up and put it in. You can even get one that's small enough you can fold up, take the front wheel off, and actually check it in a suitcase-sized bag on an airline. So lots of different options for the bike. So as I mentioned, this uses the Bosch Active line. This is a mid-drive motor from Bosch. I love using mid-drives on bikes. There's a number of advantages. It helps keep the weight centered, and you can see with the battery here right behind the seat post, it's also well centered. You've got a little charging flap here, so you can charge the battery on the bike if you wish, or you can remove it. One of the neat things is you put the key in to remove it, and the battery just kind of tilts away, and you can lift it right off with the handle here, which keeps it nice and secure, and you don't have to worry about hitting the the saddle here, or even removing the saddle, because the battery kind of slides out and up, which is a great feature. You can even check the charge level on the battery itself here, so if you brought it into the house to charge it, you can check and see if it's fully charged. So the mid-drive gives you a number of advantages aside from the weight. It also makes it a very natural experience because, of course, the motor is turning your chain, which is nicely protected by a chain guard here, which is great for a bike like this, since you likely are going to be using it for commuting and errands and transportation in general. You don't want to have to worry about getting your pants dirty. And you can see the chain guard actually is a complete coverage here, so you really don't have to worry about that. So with the mid-drive turning the chain here, that gives you a couple of advantages. First, it's a very natural experience. That's how a bike is normally propelled, is by you turning the chain. And so by having the motor situated there, it's really just augmenting what you're doing, and it makes it feel very natural. But the other advantage is that the chain is then going through your transmission here, your cogs, your cassette here, that's at 10 speeds. And when you change gears back here, because the motor is turning the chain, it actually is impacting on the motor. So it's like having a transmission for your motor. And so when you need to climb hills, you're going to be able to climb a hill a lot easier with the mid-drive, because when you change gears, it's going to have an impact on the motor. The Bosch mid-drive has a fair amount of torque, which is useful for climbing as well. It also calculates your torque, that is how hard you're pedaling, the cadence, that is how quickly your cranks are moving, and the speed of the bike. You can see there's a speed sensor back here. Calculates at 1,000 times per second, and so basically it's reading your mind. It knows how much power you want and provides that to you. And that's really useful, because if you're in tricky situations in an urban setting, maybe where you're needing to go through barriers in the road, or you've got potholes you're trying to avoid or whatever, you don't want a sudden surge of power that's going to be unexpected and kind of throw you off track. With the Bosch mid-drive, it's very natural, very responsive. You're not going to run into that problem at all. So Tern has decided to put the Active line on their Vectron here. Now the Active line is kind of the entry level of the Bosch drive systems at the moment. They have the Performance line was the next step up, and then the Performance line CX, which is, for example, what Mueller is using on their Tinker here. And the CX gives you a lot more torque for climbing hills. It's a little bit more responsive, and it gives you more assistance in the sport and turbo modes. The downside, I suppose, to the CX is that it can, if you're not careful, use more battery. Because the Active line doesn't provide as much assistance even in turbo, and it doesn't provide as much torque at any of the levels, it is going to use less battery, and so that's going to give you more range on this bike. And that's a good thing, because Tern has also opted to include the 400 watt-hour battery here, whereas again on the recent Mueller and some of the other bikes that are available right now with the Bosch drive systems, they often put a 500 watt-hour battery on there. The 500 watt-hour battery is exactly the same format, and it's backwards compatible, so that means you could buy a 500 watt for this bike if you wanted a spare, or if you wanted to use it instead, and it'll fit right in there, which is great. It adds very slightly to the weight, so there's not a lot of downsides to the 500 watt. Slightly heavier and more expensive, and I imagine it's the price issue is why Tern went with the 400. And they probably calculated for most people with the Active line in the range that it gets, you're using this in an urban setting, you're using it as a commuter bike, you're probably not looking at using it as a touring bike, and so you may not need that advanced range. If you do need more range than what the 400 watt-hour provides, of course you've got the rack here, so you could get a trunk bag or pannier bags and put a spare 500 in there, and that's going to give you a significant amount of range. They've done a good job of kind of protecting the drive unit here. There's a couple of metal or aluminum, I suppose, protectors here that are built into the frame, and that's also really useful for folding. So speaking of folding, why don't I step you through that process since I've talked about the Bosch system, and I believe I ran you through the Purion display at the top here. So really all that's left is to fold it up and take it for a ride. Okay, so I'm going to step you through the process of folding and unfolding the bike. Tern does give you a handy card here that outlines the steps: putting the seat down, rotating it, folding the bike in half, dropping the handlebars down and removing the pedal, and the reverse. I think you probably won't need this after you do it the first couple of times. It's really straightforward. So I've got my point of view camera on here. We'll see if I can get things lined up correctly during the video so you can see the process here. Let me just start by having the seat back a little bit higher up. So perhaps you're riding with the seat up. To start folding it, you'd put the seat down and you'd rotate it a little bit as well. If you've used both seat clamps here, because you've got the telescopic seat post clamp, you'd want to make sure that you lower them both. And if we just rotated a little bit, that's going to help when you are folding down the handlebars. So now we've got that done, we're just going to open up the latch here, make sure that you can see that on the video. It's actually a lot easier to do it without trying to make sure that you can see what I'm doing on the video, but we just slide this red slider over here, and then we can open up the latch, and that will allow us to start folding the bike up. So there, that latch is open, and now we can basically just kind of walk the bike backwards, and I'm trying to make sure, whoops, forgot to put the kickstand up. So do that first. Maybe I should have taken a closer look at that card after all. And now you can see we've got magnets down in there that are actually going to secure the two wheels together. And yeah, I think you saw that in there. Great. And then we're going to rotate the handlebars down, and you can see I rotated the seat the wrong direction. So again, boy, I really should have read those instructions more closely. Fortunately, it's so intuitive that you may make a few mistakes without following the instructions like I am, but you'll quickly catch on. So now I'm just going to slide this lever up here, push it down. That's going to allow me to fold the handlebars down here. You can see there's a little strap here. Again, just adjust the camera angle, and that just latches right on to here to hold the handlebars down from flapping around. And next I just remove the pedals if I wish to, and that's simply by squeezing the yellow thing here and pulling out. And now the pedal actually attaches in behind the seat post here. Can adjust the camera. There we go. And that's a great place to store the pedals, so that's pretty cool. At this point, I should point out that of course you could now pick it up, you could put it in a suitcase or a carrying bag. But one of the neat things we could do is let's bring the handlebars back up, and again, this is, be part of the process of unfolding. Just to undo the little latch there, we'll put it back under the frame, lift this up, close the latch, locks in. Now the neat thing is, now I can angle the bike up without having to carry it. And at this point, those magnets are doing a good job holding the wheels together, but you might want to take the bungee cord here, again, try to get the right angle, there's the bungee cord, wrap it around just to give it some more security. Now the really cool thing is that I can actually turn my drive system on here, and I can use the walk mode, so I'll put in Eco first, press and hold the walk assist, and now when I press the plus button, you can see the bike is actually moving itself along. And so I don't actually have to rely on my own force to push the bike around. So that's pretty cool. For unfolding, I've already folded up the handlebars here. So let me just set the bike down a little bit. There we go. And now I can move the front wheel. It's a little bit easier to do it from the other side, of course. And they even show you again, I'm not being very good at following the directions, but they actually show you on the card which side of the bike you should stand on when you're folding and unfolding. But basically, very easy to unfold. Put that latch in there, and then I would just grab the pedal out and put it back in here, squeezing that down, and adjust my seat, and we're all ready to go. So once you've done that a few times, you'll remember the steps probably a little bit better than I did, and you'll find that it really only takes a few seconds, which is great if you're planning on using public transport or something like that. So that's the folding process, and if you have specific questions about that, you can certainly contact me, and I can even email you a link to the video instructions that are a lot more professional than what I've just shown you. But I did want to show you that you don't have to be have any special skills to be able to figure out folding up and unfolding the bike. Obviously, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'll start on tour, which is a good setting. A lot of people will actually use that. Most of the time they're riding, it gives you 120% of your input power and gives you good battery range. Of course, we could move it up to sport and to turbo for hills. But I'll start out on tour, and on tour it's quite a bit of power. It's very responsive, shifting very smoothly. I'm already into my top gear, the 10th gear, and I've easily hit 28 kilometers an hour, and that's without having to work at it too hard. Riding position is nice and comfortable, very upright, slightly forward based on my height. I wouldn't mind if I could get the handlebars a little bit higher. If that's something you wanted to do. Tern does actually make a longer stem here, handle post, I believe they call it. So that would be an option you could consider to make it a little bit taller. So you're upright but kind of forward, gives you a lot of control over the bike, a lot of maneuverability. And it really does ride like a regular bike. When I quickly do this, move the handlebars, that's when I notice the smaller size of the bike. I notice it's a lot more quick to change directions. Can definitely, if you do that too much, make you a little bit unstable and wobbly. So you'll want to keep your steering smooth, but I think that's true on any bike this size, these size tires. So we've got a bit of a hill here. Let me put it up into sport. Now you will see, hopefully, if my GPS is working in sport, I'm dropping a fair bit of speed. So if I put it up to turbo, that gives me even more. I'm not quite used to the active line. Most of the bikes I ride have the performance for the CX, and definitely I do notice the more power, especially on hills. On flats, really on tour, it's not much different than tour on the CX. I know technically it is, the numbers are different, but the riding experience is very similar. But certainly on the hills, I do notice the active line doesn't give quite as much torque. And, that's still going to get you up the hill, just maybe not as fast. It's interesting, I'm noticing we've got 2-finger brake levers on here. And I guess part of that, you don't need more than 2 fingers to stop the bike, of course. Part of that is just, again, with the narrower bars, a comfort thing, perhaps, and just making sure you're not whacking your brake levers if you're going through doors and elevators and things like that. Okay, so now we're into some pretty rough terrain here, and these balloon tires do a very good job of helping me to maintain control, even over, if I ride over stuff like this. Yeah, I do feel the bumps, but I don't feel that they are causing me to lose control or not have as much control as I normally would. It's not hurting my confidence. Slightly jarring, but I think they would be on any bike, pretty big bumps. But these balloon tires are doing a good job of absorbing that. Where they're really really big bumps like that, that's definitely where the balloon tires aren't really going to be able to do much. It's the smaller kind of shocks from broken pavement and things like that that it really excels on smoothing out. Like this here, it's quite bumpy. The tires do a good job of absorbing a lot of that. I am hearing a little bit of rattling from the front fender there. I think it's this, there's a mud flap at the bottom that, you know, is great for keeping you dry, but I think that's making a little bit of noise. I don't really hear it over the wind in my ears very well, or the road noise, but I can hear it a little bit. So this is a nice, good, I mean, it's not a nice road, it's a bad road, but it's a good thing to test bikes like this on, because occasionally you will run into road surfaces like this, and the bike is handling very well on that. So I'm going to do a couple of hills, and if my GPS is working correctly on the video here, then you should be able to see the grade of the hill. Typically, you know, 10-12% grade is actually, well, on most highways, that's the maximum grade. On an urban roadway, you can sometimes exceed that, but you know, 10 or 12% is actually pretty steep. I'll probably end up hitting some hills here with maybe 20-22% grade. That's really steep. And of course, you know, those really steep grades, you are going to find that the active line won't give you as much climbing power as the performance line CX, but it should still get you on the hill. As far as the gearing goes on this bike, you know, I'm pedaling along 28, 29, up to 30 sometimes, and I feel like it could even go a little bit quicker if I wanted to. Alright, put it up into turbo for the hill, change some gears here, you know, and I'm able to maintain, without too much work, a speed of maybe 15 kilometers an hour, so that's not bad. Do like the trigger shifters here. It is bi-directional, the second one here, so I can actually use my index finger or my thumb to shift, which is handy. Trying out the brakes on the corner there. Was able to lock it up fairly easily. Do that again without locking it up this time. Yeah, there's a lot of modulation in there, so you don't really have to lock your brakes like I did there. And these tires are doing pretty well. I mean, there's not a lot of gravel on here, just a little bit of loose, fine sand on the surface. If you were to get a bike like this, I always recommend, you know, the smaller tires, the smaller wheelbase is going to make it ride differently to some degree than a regular bike. For the most part, on straight sections, it's fine. It's just when you're cornering, you're really going to notice that it behaves a little bit differently. So take it out and just do some corners in a parking lot, you know, do some figure eights and stuff, just to get yourself kind of familiar with what kind of leaning you need to do, how tight you should turn, that sort of thing. I must still have it on turbo. I didn't notice that hill at all coming up. Okay, so I'm 38, 40, I'm still pedaling, I'm still able to provide some input on the pedals. So it is geared really well. It is nice having the 10 speed so you can maintain some speed if you wish to, but you also have a nice low gear for hill climbing. I haven't had any problems with the hills yet. Bit of an incline here, and I'm still, you know, kind of that 29, 28, 30 range. At least according to the Pure on display here. I notice sometimes The GPS, you'll notice in the video, is actually a little bit slow. So whereas the speed on the display here is instantaneous from the rotation of the wheel, the GPS is calculating based on the position. So you'll notice that the grade as well, start heading up a hill, and it won't start showing you the grade for a while. And I'll get to the top of the hill and it'll get me getting steeper even though I'm getting flatter. So there's just a little bit of a delay there. Yeah, I'm really starting to get used to the riding position, cornering on this bike. It feels it's kind of sporty, you know. It's a lot of fun. Getting used to the Purion display, but I do kind of miss the Intuvia showing me the level of assistance I'm on, and I can change that, I believe, to display that. I'm not sure. Oh, missed the light here. All right. There's sensors at this particular light. I learned that the hard way once. If there's in the car behind you and you don't press the pedestrian button over there, the light's never going to change. So on the display here you can see I've got my light on, the battery indicator. If I press and hold this just cycles through, shows me the total, my range, which is really useful to know, and the current level that you're on, along with the trip counter. So I can choose to display that I'm on turbo rather than maybe looking at the distance that I've done. Unlike the Intuvia display, it doesn't show the time or the trip time, which isn't a big deal. I imagine part of the reason they went with the Purion is because they've got this massive light on the front here. The neat thing about this light is you can angle it while it's on the bars without having to get off the bike. Okay, so we're going to try this hill in turbo. It's actually a relatively steep hill. Won't generally find hills much steeper than this in a commute, or if you do, you want to avoid it. But we'll give it a try here on turbo, and I'll probably have to choose some of my easier gears here. Yeah, you know, the motor's helping me out, no problem. But I can definitely notice, you know, I just don't have quite as much oomph as I would. But, you know, 12, 13 kilometers an hour, I'm not even in my lowest gear at this point, so it's not a problem getting up this hill. It's quite a long hill. Some steep sections, and you know, I'm still not in my first gear. I think I'm in my second or third gear there, and I'm maintaining that 12 kilometers an hour. But really now I'm in my easiest gear, pedaling very lightly. You know, now I'm dropping down to 9. This is very steep. So I think you'd be able to accomplish any hill, no matter how steep with this bike, but maybe not really, really fast. The Active Line motor is quite quiet compared to the Performance Line CX. And hear that it's not providing that much noise, even though it's working really hard on this hill. And mostly it's working hard. I'm not having to work that hard. Alright, now we can test out the brakes. This smaller wheelbase does make it easy for doing corners and such. Okay, I can put it back onto tour. Not that the motor is going to activate unless I pedal, and I'm not going to pedal down this hill. Close to 50. No problem braking, and you know, I really don't feel out of control on the bike. That's always important. You want to make sure that you feel like you're in control of your bike all the time. Alright, so this is Tern Vektron, and I'm Kelly with kellysmusic.ca. You can check out all the details on our website, And if you have any questions, just send us an email, give us a call, or reach out to us on Facebook. Okay, and just for fun, I'm going to take Riessen-Mueller's Tinker for a test ride as well and compare it to the Tern Vektron. I've pointed out some of the differences already, but it's interesting, they're pretty much identical in terms of the length of the bike. They have similar wheels, although these are the Big Ben on the Tinker and the Big Apple on the Vektron. And of course the Tinker doesn't fold, it just is compact, so we can actually adjust the handlebars to fold all the way down. And one of the things you will notice is you can get these bars much higher than on the Vektron because it is a telescopic adjustment here. Since the bike doesn't fold, they're able to put a lot of features in like that. So it's really durable or really stable because we've got a pin there and a quick release up here. So it's easy to adjust, but it's also super stable once it is adjusted. So I'm going to ride with it probably about there. That locks in, close that. And we can also adjust the stem angle, which I love, and that's independent of adjusting the height. And so I can make it further away or quite a bit closer. And again, very stable because we've got not only this latching mechanism here, but the two latches here. And so you can fold that flat, and of course you can get the seat post really low, but it doesn't fold up completely. Interesting difference on the way they've designed the mud flaps on the fenders there. And looks like rack-wise are very similar. Battery placement on the Tinker is down under here rather than behind the seat post. What that does, you'll notice that we've got two bars here, and again, because it's not folding, they're able to make the frame a lot stiffer, and I'm going to be really curious to see how that rides compared to just having the one bar here. So let me take it out. The other thing, of course, that I've mentioned a few times in this video is Tinker here does have the Bosch CX. It's going to give me a lot more power up the hills. It also uses the Gates carbon belt instead of a chain. And really, for a folding bike, or it's not a folding bike, in this case Tinker is just a compact bike, but a bike that maybe you're going to bring inside, bring into work, bring in your car, your boat, your RV, having a belt is perfect because you're not worried about getting grease and oil everywhere. You're not worried about having to do maintenance on the chain. You're not having to worry about having a shorter lifespan of the chain. Even better than having the belt is also having the NuVinci CVT. So from a riding perspective, this is brilliant because you can shift while you're stopped. You can shift while you're climbing a hill. It's very intuitive, but also no maintenance. So if you are putting this in the back of your vehicle or an RV or some, wherever, you don't have to worry about protecting the derailleur. There's no derailleur because it's all internally geared. So you don't have to worry about it going out of alignment, gear skipping, that sort of thing. So I do really love that about this bike. So we'll take this out for a ride, put my lights on. We have the Bosch Intuvia display here, which is bigger. It gives you more information. It's not as compact. Yeah, as soon as I get on, I notice a couple of things. I do notice definitely more power from the CX. I mean, I'm really easily hitting that top speed on this bike compared to the Vektron, but realistically, both bikes on flat, I was able to hit 30 no problem. So that's not a big deal. I think it's on the hills that I'm really going to notice it. The other thing though that I am noticing, see, I've ridden Tinker quite a bit. That was my first ride on the Vektron. Tinker definitely handles differently than the Vektron. The Vektron I would describe as it's not exactly twitchy or anything like that, but my riding position on Tinker, I'm actually further back. I'm not as forward. And when I do this, when I swerve, it feels a little bit more stable, and I'm not sure if that's just the frame design or what it is, riding position, but somehow, or maybe just because I'm used to it more, but when I swerve, I don't feel as wobbly. I don't feel that the steering is quite as fast, per se, perhaps, as the Vektron. With the Vektron, when you corner, like I said, you know, you want to do a little bit of practice with that. Okay, let me boost it up into turbo here, and no problem climbing up that hill. Yeah, so I'm not saying the Vektron did anything wrong with it. It's just the transition to a compact bike, I think, would probably, for most people, be easier on Tinker than the Vektron. Tinker, really, it is just like a regular bike. Yeah, there's smaller wheels. It's kind of fun riding a bike with smaller wheels like that. It takes a little bit of getting used to visually, but actually riding the bike is a lot easier to get used to. It won't take more than a couple rides to get used to the Vektron. So we're coming up to the rough pavement here. So we still have the balloon tires like we had on the Vektron, but now we have a suspension fork as well. And I was just curious, you know, on the really small stuff, the suspension fork definitely adds, but really, it's the big stuff where I think the suspension fork really contributes, because it really just kind of, I mean, you're still going over bumps, but it's a little softer, a little more subtle. It's not quite as jarring. So it is nice having the suspension fork. Of course, that, you know, does add to the weight and adds to the price. Obviously, Tinker is a more expensive bike than the Vektron. You're getting a better drive system, you're getting the belts, you're getting the Da Vinci system, you're getting a 500 watt-hour battery instead of a 400. You know, so those are all things that are going to make it more expensive. If you don't need a bike to fold, you're just looking for something that's compact, boy, this is a hard bike to beat. It's definitely handles itself really well. There's where I love that Da Vinci system, being able to shift while stopped. Did a quick stop there, and so easy to get into the right gear if you forgot to shift ahead of time. Again, just a quick shift there. Okay, we'll head up the same hills and see what we feel. Definitely taking off. I'm in sport mode now. Definitely I can accelerate more quickly with the CX drive. Another advantage of the CX is Bosch has an update. I haven't updated the Tinker here with it yet, I don't believe. No, I haven't. Where the sport mode becomes EMTB mode, which is really basically just an automatic mode. It automatically adjusts your level of assistance based on what you're doing. So, you know, here without too much effort in 20, 22, 21 on the hill. So, you know, you definitely are noticing some more assistance on the hills from the higher torque on the CX. Not that there's anything wrong with the Vektron, I made it up all the hills. So you're just going to do a little bit quicker with the CX, maybe a little less effort. Might be a little louder than the active line. Of course, it's nice and quiet with the belt instead of the chain. longer brake levers. Not sure that I have a feeling one way or another about that. They're hydraulic disc brakes on both bikes, which is great because you're not going to have any problem stopping. Instead of relying on your force in a cable, relying on the hydraulic fluid. Cadence-wise, I should have tried pedaling down that hill. I'll head up this tall one here and try pedaling, but I think we're looking at very similar gear ratios with the new Vinci system here. We have about a 380% gear ratio. I think that would be very similar to the 10-speed on the Vectron. And generally, as I hit 40-45 kilometers an hour on a new Vinci system, I'm finding that it's kind of the limit of the high gear, which, you know, is for the most part the type of riding you're going to be doing on a bike like this is just fine. Okay, we'll move it up to turbo for the hill here. One thing I would recommend adding to both bikes would be a mirror. It's definitely going to help you be more aware of traffic in the city without having to look behind you all the time. It's an easy thing to add. Yeah, so I've got it up in turbo. And, you know, spinning my legs pretty quickly, but not really having to apply a lot of force. I'm at 16, 15. Yeah, averaging about 15. Oh, down to 14 there. Try the next part here, which is a fairly long climb. Up to 20. It's difficult comparing bikes like this in terms of power because, you know, there's so many variables. You know, trying to use roughly the same cadence, provide the same amount of input power, but you know, it's really hard to do that. I think what I'm really noticing here is definitely I'm going a little bit quicker up this hill, but I have more. Oh, I'm not even in turbo. There, try that. Oh yeah, there we go. Well, I won't do the whole hill again for you. Let's decide that we could probably done 14 the whole way up if we put it on turbo. Actually, what's interesting is the torque and assistance, especially the torque, on the performance line in Tour is the same as the active line in turbo. So that's an interesting number for comparison. Yeah, so here we go, pedaling down the hill, 40 something. No problem with being able to pedal and provide some input. No problem with the brakes either. Don't have to have it in turbo anymore. Bump that down. I'm definitely noticing descending the hill on the Vectron was slightly less comfortable. There wasn't anything wrong with it, but I was in a more forward position. And I'm finding that I really like a little bit of a less forward position that I can take with the Tinker here, especially with the adjustability on the stem. Again, hitting 45 and I'm still able to pedal and provide some input power. My legs aren't spinning too fast. So the gear ratio is just fine on this bike and on the Vectron. 10 speeds on a folding bike is actually pretty impressive that they managed to fit all that in there. That's one of the reasons why the derailleur is so low. Anyways, This was just a quick comparison of the Vectron and the Tinker. For more information on either of the bikes, to ask me questions, to try them out for yourself, head on over to our website at citruscycles.ca.